Hello and welcome to the lecture series on human resource management. So friends, up till now we have learnt about various functions of human resource management, beginning from the functions of human resource management as the recruitment and selection process, that how we recruit and select the employees for the organization. Then we learnt about how they are trained so that they perform up to the mark, they perform in accordance with what is required from them. So moving further, after they have been trained, recruited, selected by the organization, how do you differentiate people who are performing well from those who are not performing well, the good performance and not so good performance? So that is where the role of performance appraisal comes into play. So friends, our today's topic of discussion would be performance appraisal. Now, after being placed and trained as an employee on the job, the next important and very essential step in the management of human resources of an organization is to evaluate the performance of an employee on the job. The management must be able to recognize the level of an employee's job performance, and then they can be rewarded on the basis of their contributions to the organizational goals. Now, it is very clear, friends, that every employee will not have the same level of performance. So, if there are 50 employees in a particular department, all those 50 would have a different level of performance. So, how do you differentiate each one of them based on their performance, based on their level of achievement of goals? That is where performance appraisal comes handy. Now, what is performance appraisal? So, let us have a quick overview of what is performance appraisal. So, it is a systematic and periodic process of measuring an individual's work performance against established requirements of a job. So, every job would be having different requirements. So, is the individual or is the employee working according to what is required of him, and is it being done in a systematic manner? So, that is performance appraisal. Then another way of defining it is that it is a subjective evaluation of employees' strengths and weaknesses, relative worth to organization and the future development potential. So, here we are talking of there are two key words I would like to emphasize upon. First is the subjective evaluation. So, subjective evaluation means that whosoever is rating or whosoever is assessing the employees, it is his or her subjective evaluation. That is, it does not mean that it will be correct every time, and we will be discussing about that aspect also, but yes, it is a subjective evaluation. And secondly, I would like to emphasize upon the point of future development potential. So, it is very important that performance appraisal leads to development of an employee, because if the employee is not working up to the mark, if the level of performance is not up to the mark, then he or she needs to be trained, he or she needs to be given that feedback so that they can improve and develop for the future, for the future roles that they might be taking in the organization. So, here are certain formal definitions by eminent authors. So, Edwin B. Flippo states that performance appraisal is a systematic, periodic and so far as a humanly possible an impartial rating of an employee's excellence in matters pertaining to his present job and to his potentialities for a better job. So, that is what I emphasized in the previous definition also, that performance appraisal, it assesses your current level of performance, and at the same time it helps you to develop skills, it helps you to better your performance so that you can take up better roles or roles which are up the level of hierarchy that you are currently in. So, another definition is by Dale Yoder. So, this states that performance appraisal includes all the formal procedures used to evaluate personalities and contributions and potentials of group members in a working organization. It is a continuous process to secure information necessary for making the correct and objective decisions on employees. So, here the emphasis is on collecting or seeking the information that is necessary, so that the appraisal is done in a subjective manner, is done in an objective manner which is free from bias. Now, coming to the history of performance appraisal, that is how performance appraisal came into being, is that it was first used during the First World War when Walter Dill Scott in the US Army, he adopted the man-to-man rating system for evaluating the performance of military personnel. So, performance appraisal basically began by the military personnel, and later on it came into the organizations. And during the 1920 and 30s, the merit rating programs were used for employees of industrial units. So, it began in the army, but later it was used and implemented in industries and organizations. And then in the early 50s, the attention began to performance appraisal of technical, professional and managerial personnel. Now, performance appraisal is also known as merit rating, behavioral assessment, employee evaluation, personnel review, progress report, staff assessment, service rating and fitness report. So, these are some of the names that are synonymously used with performance appraisal. Now, why do we appraise the performance? What are the objectives of personnel appraisal? Let us quickly go through these objectives. So, first and foremost is to effect the promotions based on competence and performance. So, obviously, when we are working in an organization, we definitely want to be promoted to a higher level, but do each of the employee gets a promotion? No. The employees that are working at par, the employees that are working in accordance with the set standards, they are the ones who are promoted by the organization. So, how do you differentiate between people who are to be promoted and who are not to be promoted? So, there, that is where performance appraisal helps. So, it helps in promoting people on the basis of their competence. Then the second objective is that it confirms the services of probationary employees upon the completion of the probationary period satisfactorily. So, where employees are working on probation, and after completing their probation period, they have to confirm their services. So, there also their appraisal, their performance is evaluated, so that they can be confirmed in their services. So, if the probationary employees are not working satisfactorily, the raters feel that the employee is not up to the mark, they are not performing in accordance with the set standards, then their probationary period might be increased. So, they are not confirmed in their service, but their probationary period would be increased. Then the next objective is to assess the training and development needs of the employees. So, as we have already learnt about the training and development of employees as a crucial aspect, especially in the current scenario where there is a lot of technological advancements and there is a volatile environment out there. So, we need to train our employees, but that again we need to assess the performance of an employee. If we feel that he or she needs to be trained on a particular software, a particular skill, then we will be providing them training. But how do we come to know that who is to be trained? That is through performance appraisal. The next objective of performance appraisal is to decide upon a pay raise where regular pay scales are not fixed. So, many organizations, they do not have a fixed scale where each and every employee will be getting a pay raise. So employees have the organizations, they have a limited amount of funds that can be distributed as a pay raise. So every employee will not get a bonus, every employee will not get a pay hike. So who will get the pay hike? That performance appraisal will decide upon. Then the next objective is to let the employees know where they stand with respect to their performance and to assist them in their development. So this is very crucial and very pertinent in the current scenario when we talk of the technological advancements as far as the career progression is concerned. So we all want a higher level, we all want to be taking up challenging roles, but are we working up to the mark? Are we working according to the standards set by the organization? That is also very important for an employee to know. So through performance appraisal, an employee gets a feedback as to what is their assessment, what is their level of performance, and what needs to be improved upon so that they can take up the challenging roles in future. Then it also helps to determine whether the HR programs have been effective or not. So performance appraisal is also a significant marker as to determine whether the HR programs that have been implemented are effective or not. And lastly, the objective of performance appraisal is to improve the communication, because these appraisals, these provide as a dialogue format for superior and subordinate and improves the understanding of personal goals and concerns. So here's where the superiors and the subordinates, they discuss that what is lacking, what are the personal goals, and how these personal goals of an individual or an employee can be aligned with the organizational goals. So with the help of performance appraisal, we tend to communicate with the superiors to have a better understanding of the organizational goals. Now friends, coming to the next part of performance appraisal, we can state that performance appraisal, it creates competitive advantage for an organization. Now what is competitive advantage? Well, competitive advantage means that how is your organization different from your competitors in terms of marketing, in terms of product, in terms of employees, in terms of HR practices. So how are you as an organization better than your competitors? And performance appraisal, if done in an effective and impactful manner, it can create a competitive advantage. So let's understand how performance appraisal can be a source of competitive advantage for an organization. So first and foremost, performance appraisal improves performance. So that is the core of appraisal, that we help individuals to improve their performance. So an effective appraisal system, it can contribute to competitive advantage by improving the employee job performance in two ways. So by directing the employee behavior towards organizational goals, and secondly by monitoring that behavior to ensure that goals are met. So we have a clear understanding of what the organizational goals are, and then we monitor our behavior to ascertain that those goals are met. So that is how performance appraisal helps in improving the performance of individuals or employees. The second aspect of performance appraisal being a source of competitive advantage is that it helps in making correct decisions. So appraisal, as you all must have understood by now, that appraisal or any evaluation or any feedback that we give to our employees, it is a critical input in making decisions such as pay raise, promotion, transfer, training, discharges and completion of probationary period. So it is the soul of all these decisions is performance appraisal, and right decisions on each of these can contribute to competitive strength of a firm. So it's not that you are promoting the wrong person, or you are giving a pay hike to a wrong person. With the help of performance appraisal, you tend to make better decisions, you tend to make well informed decisions. So, that is how these right decisions contribute to the competitive strength. The third aspect where it creates a competitive advantage is by minimizing job dissatisfaction and turnover. So, friends, employees, they tend to become emotional and frustrated if they perceive that the ratings they get are unfair and inaccurate. So, if you feel that your performance is not evaluated properly, or your boss or your supervisor is unfair with you, and he or she is not assessing your hard work, your performance, then it is very normal that you will feel frustrated. But with the help of performance appraisal, your performance is rated in a very fair manner. So, this brings job satisfaction, and such employees, they find that efforts that they had put in, they become futile, and obviously in the case if the supervisor is not understanding, they will obviously get demotivated. But if your performance is rated accurately, if it is rated in a fair manner, then the employees feel satisfied and they will be motivated to stay in the organization. So, this is how a performance appraisal can also be a source of competitive advantage for the organization. Now, what are the traits, or what are the typical characteristics that will make the appraisal system effective one? So, there are number of performance appraisal systems, but what things are to be there to make them effective? So, first and foremost aspect of the characteristics of an effective performance appraisal system is that it should be simple and understandable by employees. It should not be a complex one where the employees do not understand what is expected of them. So, when you are discussing or when you are designing the appraisal system, it should be as simple as possible. Then it should be suitable to be adopted for appraisal at regular intervals. So, since we talked of the performance appraisal being a continuous process, so it should be so adjusted that it is suitable at regular intervals, so that it becomes a continuous process, and not that it is something that is happening once in 2 years or 3 years. Then it should create an atmosphere of mutual understanding and confidence. So, many a times it is felt that the employees are afraid or stressed out when the topic of appraisal comes, or whenever the time of appraisals is there, they feel stressed out. So, it should not be there. To make the performance appraisal effective, the system should be such that it creates an atmosphere or an environment of trust, of confidence, of mutual understanding, so that the employees are not afraid of being evaluated. The next is that it should be capable of giving equitable justice to all employees, be objective and free from personal bias. So, we learned that since the appraisal system as such is a subjective one. So, by subjective means that everybody will be assessing the employee in a different manner. So, that is how the personal biases do creep in when we are evaluating. But to make your performance appraisal system effective, try and bring in equitable justice for all employees. It should be free from any personal bias. You can keep aside your personal biases if you don't get along with a particular employee. That doesn't mean that he or she is less competent or his or her performance is less. So, try and be away from these biases whenever you are appraising or evaluating the performance of the employees. Then another part of being an effective performance appraisal system is that it should be in sync with the organization's structure, objective and it should be based on the latest development in that particular area. So, the last point in the characteristics of effective performance appraisal system is that all the stakeholders that are involved in the designing formats, they must be included in the performance appraisal system. So, whatever policies are there, the procedures are needed, the designing formats are there, all the stakeholders must be involved while designing the effective performance appraisal. So, friends, the next part of the lecture is about the process of performance appraisal. So, broadly talking of the process, there are 5 steps in which the performance appraisal takes place. So, you can see in the slide that these are the 5 steps in the process, beginning with the to set the performance standards and goals. Second, to measure the performance. Third, to compare the actual performance to established performance standards. Fourth is to take corrective measures or corrective actions, and last is to use the information gained from the process to set up future performance standards. So, we are going to learn about each step one by one, starting from setting the performance standards. Now, while you are setting the performance standards, you must determine the outputs, accomplishments and skills to be evaluated so that the person clearly knows as to what is to be evaluated. You have to be very clear about the outputs, and then these standards should have evolved from the job analysis and job description. It should be clear and objective, easily understandable and easily measurable, and it should not be expressed or articulated in a vague manner. So, many a times the language that we have articulated when we are setting the standards is very vague or very broad. So, we need to be very specific as to what we want to evaluate. What are the standards that you are fixing for an employee's performance? So, the more the clarity, the more the employees know what they have to achieve. So, it is just like goal setting. So, when the goals are clear, you can easily achieve those goals, but when the goal itself is very vague, it becomes difficult for the person to understand what he or she has to do. So, same is with setting the performance standards. We should be very clear as to what we need to evaluate. Then once the performance standards are established, we need to communicate to respective employees so that they know what is expected of them. So, it is not just that you have articulated, you have designed these standards and you just keep it with themselves. You have to clearly communicate this to the employees so that they clearly know as to what is expected of them. This is a very crucial step, and most organizations fail to communicate it timely and in a very open manner. Then once you have communicated it to the employees, take the feedback from employees on the standards communicated to them, and if required, the standards may be modified or they may be revised in the light of the feedback obtained. So, once you have communicated these standards to the employees, just talk to them and take a small feedback from these employees, whether they are clear about what they have to do or whether they are clear as to what they have to achieve. And if they feel that some parts are missing or some more things can be added to these performance standards, then you can modify these standards then and there at that very moment itself. So, once these standards are set, now is the time to measure actual performance. So, in this stage, the actual performance of the employee, it is measured on the basis of information available from various sources such as personal observation, statistical reports, oral reports and written reports. So, we will be learning about how to measure the performance or how to measure the appraisals, but this is the stage where once the employees are clear what they have to do, their performances will be evaluated, their performances will be measured. Now, comparing actual performance with the standards. Now, the employees have performed, the standards are clear to them. Now is the time that you actually compare that whatever they have performed, is it in sync with the standards that were set, or is it alienating somewhere. So, the actual performance is compared with the predetermined standards that we set in the first stage. Then such a comparison may reveal deviation between standard and actual performance, as I said. So, there might be chances that the actual performance does not deviate the standards, the actual performance is totally aligned towards what the standards were set. But if it is not the case, if your performance is deviating from the actual performance, that is the time where you can make a comparison of both these performances. Then is the time to take corrective action, and this is the most important aspect of performance appraisal, because then the purpose of improving your performance will not be solved. Now, if you know that your performance is not up to the mark, it is not according to the standard set, then what corrective measures you will be taking, what action you will be taking. So, these are the areas that need improvement that are identified in this stage. The corrective action can be of two types, it can be immediate or it can be basic. So, while immediate deals predominantly with the symptoms, whereas the basic, it delves into the causes of deviations, that why is the individual or why is that employee not performing according to the standards. Is there some communication gap, is that some psychological problem, is it due to lack of training. So, that is how you understand the cause of deviation, and then you make changes or adjust the differences permanently. So, friends, up till now we have understood as to what is performance appraisal. As I said, that once the employees, they join the organization, they are trained, now is the time of their performance. But for the organization, it is very important for them to understand or to differentiate between which employee is performing well and which is not, so that they can give them the bonuses, they can give them pay hikes, they can give promotions, or if the case is otherwise, the employees are not performing up to the mark, they might be given training so that they can work accordingly. Then we learnt about the objectives of performance appraisal, and currently we are learning about the various process or various stages in the process of performance appraisal. So, we will be continuing from here. Thank you.